It's incredibly galling to see the lengths with which these experts will go to fight being recorded. And I think we all know why. I had a woman that I represented. She pulled children out of a burning school bus and was burnt all over. The defense expert was of the opinion she was faking. I was furious. And so I came home and I told my husband, I'm going to quit the normal practice of law and I'm going to study these tests and I'm going to expose some of these people.
Welcome back to another episode of Courtside Convo. I'm Dan Dosky from Legal Graphic Works, and really pleased to have with us today Dorothy Clay Sims, an attorney of great repute and reputation. Dorothy, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So tell me, let's just go back to the beginning. We kind of start everybody off that way. What got you interested in the law, and why did you decide to become an attorney?
Well, it's a little complicated. My grandfather was a well-known lawyer. He actually was in the U.S. Congress, and his son became governor of Kentucky. And my grandfather used to have these really interesting stories, and I knew I wanted to go into some kind of profession. I decided to go into law, and my grandfather told my mother that it was a terrible idea, that I would never get a husband. I had two, by the way, thank you. So he tried to tell her to talk me out of it, and that only made me even more determined. And in retrospect, I wonder if he did that on purpose, because I was pretty oppositional. But I also had a brother with severe Down syndrome, and I felt very protective of him. When I went into law, I knew I wanted to go in to the type of law that represented people that were hurt, that were disabled, because I saw how my brother was treated, and I knew these people needed help. And I've loved it. I've just loved doing this kind of work.
So where did that take you from there? Once you got through law school, what kind of lawyer did you become?
Well, first I started doing black lung law, and then I started doing workers' compensation, and then I started cross-examining the doctors, and I really did a lot of research about the kinds of tests they were given. I had physicals performed on me to try to understand what they were doing. I had a real concern with the insurance experts lying about what actually occurred during the evaluation and lying about the science. And when I did a deep dive, I realized I was right. They were misrepresenting everything. So I then started doing more work on psychology, psychological tests. I took the test. I met the authors. I met the creator of the MMPI, the Halster-Vitan. And then I learned how they were manipulating the test. And so my practice slowly morphed over time to cross-examining expert witnesses in either criminal murder cases or in civil cases. And what I learned, which is horrific, is that even when these doctors are being recorded, they still misrepresent what occurs. And my husband's a physician, and he works for my firm. And he's done about 600 cases where he's looked at videotapes, read the report, and analyzed whether what was in the report accurately reflected what went on during the exam. Turns out 100% of the time, it is not an accurate reflection. And he was so shocked, he wrote an article about it. Now he has a book coming out about the top defense myths about, personal injury, medical malpractice, etc. He was very instrumental in helping me with my book, Exposing Deceptive Defense Doctors, which actually I'm happy to say was a #1 bestseller for 3 years in a row. And I think it might be the overall top bestseller for the publisher, because I don't think anyone ever took that topic on before. What I've learned is it's horrific, honestly. For example, we are now pushing to get the defense psychological and neuropsychological exam videotaped. And the reason we're doing that is because I've had probably hundreds of cases now where the doctor misrepresented what actually took place and altered the test. In fact, I ended up writing a law review article that's been adopted by a federal judge that talks about why the lawyer needs to get all the test data himself, not just to another expert, and we need to record the exam. One case in particular stands out involving a doctor who examined a woman, and when we got the video and we had it analyzed by our consultant, what we found is the doctor altered the test administration 67 times. He changed our client's answers. He hand wrote down, and to me, this is galling. He hand wrote down answers my client never gave. And then when he was asked, don't you think that's unethical? His response was no. Unbelievable. He sped up, he altered tests of effort. A lot of times, what we see in these cases are experts who'll give a test and then they'll speed it up, and that will cause the patient to fail because let's say they're asked to look at images and asked to determine what they remember. And if they don't remember enough images, the conclusion is they're faking. But the problem is the defense expert speeds up the test to make them fail. And we see this in cases over and over again. It's incredibly galling to see the lengths with which these experts will go to fight being recorded. And I think we all know why. And then even when they are recorded, they do these kinds of things. Imagine what they do if they're not being recorded. I had a murder case, a double homicide case that I was consulting on. And we were fighting really hard to be able to get the expert videotaped during the evaluation. And initially the judge was resistant to it, but after we had attorneys weigh in and explain why this witness was not trustworthy, we won. And then ultimately we ended up getting a not guilty by reason of insanity verdict, which occurs in I think less than 1% of the cases. Yeah. And one of the reasons was because we were able to record it.
So let me ask you about that, because I lead our video department here at Legal Graphic Works. Been in hundreds of CMEs, compulsory medical examinations, which the plaintiffs have to submit to. And in Florida, we videotape a lot of these things. I know that's not the case necessarily around the country. But from my standpoint, I mean, I have tons of stories of they're just trying to get in the way, saying that you're in their way, they can't do their job. And then in those neuropsychological exams telling you, no, you can't put the camera here, you can't put the camera there, you can't video this, you can't video that. And as you know, we even had one doctor.
Yeah.
As you know, we even had one doctor tell the videographer that he owned the video and take the memory cards. So it is
there was
just
an order
crazy.
saying he was not entitled to that.
Yeah. So how do you besides recording these guys, how do you fight back?
Well, luckily we have AI now, and there's a lot of problems with AI, don't get me wrong, but I'm finding that AI is much more helpful for the plaintiff than the defense, because the plaintiff's experts are treating doctors for the most part. They don't have the motivation to misrepresent the facts or the science. Now with AI, what I do is I have AI that I use called Eve. And if anyone is interested in it, reach out to me because I have a QR code and you can get a discount. But what Eve does is I'll upload the transcript of the evaluation. I'll upload the report and say, I was just reviewing one earlier. The doctor made a comment in the previous case about a patient having been abused as a child, which is a great way to blame everything on that. Except in the transcript, she denied it. And so I upload the transcript and the report and say, tell me what's inconsistent. Then I upload the report and all the medical records and say, what did the doctor misrepresent in the medical records or leave out, like T brain scans? It turns out there's quite a bit. Then I'll upload the doctor's background, and I have backgrounds on over 2,200 expert witnesses around the U.S. Some of it's 19,000 pages long. So I'll ask AI, tell me what's in the background that's inconsistent with what the witness says in the case. It is extremely helpful. I teach AI. My sons are lawyers. I live in Los Angeles, and they teach it with me and my husband. We taught it in Spain, and I taught it in Portugal, and we teach it throughout the U.S. And we found it extremely helpful to expose the industry's misrepresentation. Yeah, you can take a pleading by the defense and say, what did they misrepresent? And they'll put something in quotes that isn't in the case they cited. So AI is very, very exciting. In fact, I'm creating software with a coder on researching defense experts, medical researches, and causation. I think it's going to be embraced more by the plaintiff's bar than the defense bar. I think a lot of defense attorneys don't realize how dishonest and bad their experts actually are.
Yeah,
Now,
how
sometimes, sometimes they do, but
I
it,
mean, for people that
I think
don't
for the most
know,
part, it's a shock.
yeah, for people that don't know, like how much are these defense doctors that, tend to do a lot of cases and medical exams, how much money are they pulling in just from that practice?
Well, they always claim not to know. I don't know about you, but I know what I made last year. I don't have to look it up. It's not confusing to me. It's not a question I don't understand. But when you ask them, do you that I'm making 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million? I've had experts tell me they don't know. 20 million a year stands out. You send a thank you card for the sources that are getting you that much money. It can be huge. It can be 50 to $100,000 for one case. And let's face it, I think I believe it was in the Law Review article, some research indicates how many times will the defense hire you if you give an opinion that's contrary to their best interest? They stop after 3 times. So the reality is these people know that if they don't give an opinion that the defense wants, they're not going to be used. Just that simple.
Yeah. So besides this, which is incredibly interesting and great work that you're doing, I mean, you have a long career and you've worked on a lot of different types of cases. What are a couple that just kind of stand out as career highlights, whether they were, big victories, they could have been big defeats, just something that stands out to you as one of your favorite or memorable cases?
Well, I think I have a couple. The Austin Harrouff case is one case. He was charged with 2 counts of murder, and we were able to get a not guilty by reason of insanity. He clearly was not competent when he uh, did what he did in that
Yeah.
particular case. He was severely mentally ill. He had lovely parents that were very worried about him. They didn't know what was going on, and I was so grateful that the right thing happened. And unfortunately, oftentimes it doesn't happen. For example, I was on the Casey Anthony defense team, and that case could have gone the other way. She was lucky in that she had a really good team of fine lawyers. But the reality is, public defenders are so overworked right now, they cannot put the time into these cases that they need. And so other people charged with similar crimes are going to go to prison because of bad science. In Casey's case, we found out after the trial that the expert that created the software that was tracking where she went or whomever went on the family computer, the prosecution was alleging that she searched chloroform like dozens of times. The creator of the software that allegedly reached that conclusion had already reached out to the prosecutor to tell them that there was a problem with the software. And we were not told that until the testimony was completed. And it was too late to get that information to the jury. So my biggest concerns right now are what is scientific, and so much garbage is coming in as evidence of scientific analysis when it is absolutely not. It is absolutely not. And that's really my passion. So those are 2 cases that stood out. One other case early on in my career, I had a woman that I represented. She was amazing. She pulled children out of a burning school bus and was burnt all over. She had an injury with a very bad herniated disc. The defense expert was of the opinion she was faking. At that point, she was the 60th client in a row that this expert said was exaggerating based on the test. And I just lost it. I was furious. And so I came home and I told my husband, I'm going to quit the normal practice of law and I'm going to study these tests and I'm going to expose some of these people. So I went to Minnesota and met the creator of the MMPI, which is the most largely used psychological test in the world.
Right.
And I showed him these cases and he burst out laughing. He goes, "This isn't true. He's misrepresenting my test." And ultimately, I got testimony from Dr. Butcher that the expert in that case, if he had been a Dr. Butcher student, he would have failed him because he clearly misrepresented the test results. And then I realized if he's doing it with this test, then a lot of these experts are doing it with a lot of other tests as well. And that's why I'm pushing so hard to make sure lawyers record these exams.
Yeah, I mean it's a huge problem, and people have been, fighting that fight on behalf of their clients for a long time. But you guys are taking it to another level, which is really amazing. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can find you and reach you?
But they just Google me. My website will come up. I think my contact is in my Wikipedia. But I am glad to share this stuff. And I've got information on bad experts. I'm glad to share that as well. I have motions to compel video. I have hundreds of pages of orders of it. I have the general public, if anybody's watching this, to understand that if they are sitting on a jury, for example, and a defense expert, an insurance defense, not criminal, an insurance defense expert is making claims about what transpired during the exam or what the science is, they need to have a real critical eye for that. Because I'll give you one example that is just, I mean, I'm walking around frustrated all the time now. But when my husband and who's a physician, and my son who's a lawyer have a book in editing right now with trial guides. And my husband took one of the typical defense myths, which is I believe you have to have a loss of consciousness to have a traumatic brain injury, which some experts will claim. And he used software that combed through 200 million medical journal articles. He could not find a single one to support that position. But there were hundreds, possibly even thousands of articles supporting the opposite. And so what's happening is a lot of these defense experts are making up the science. And that's why when I take depositions for other attorneys, and when I do that, I subpoena them to bring all their research, and they don't have it because it doesn't exist, because it's not real, right? I mean, it's incredible. People are getting hurt. People are having their civil liberties taken away. I wouldn't doubt that there are people that are being on death row from bad science. There are people that are losing custody of their children. They're losing their disability claims. They're losing personal injury, medical malpractice. It's awful. And in fact, recently we did a review of a medical malpractice case, and the defense invented a term that didn't exist to try to explain why somebody had pressure sore that nobody treated or bothered to document that ended up killing them. The fraud in the scientific community right now in forensics is shocking. If somebody wants to get an overall sense of the best reference that I would give them is a book by Stuart Ritchie, a psychologist, called Science Fiction. And it goes through, how journals aren't verifying if there's a conflict of interest about a third of the time because they don't care. You can't get a journal to retract an article. I tried because I had proof that the article was false. And I had proof from people that were involved in cases that the articles cited. The editor would not retract the article. Too bad. The other problem that we see is a lot of these journals are being taken over by defense experts, which means they're not agreeing to publish articles that are contrary to the defense position, which means the science is being corrupted.
Yeah. Well, it's unbelievable. Thank you for being out there. Can you tell us again, what's your email? What's the best email if somebody wants to reach out to you?
Sure, it's DCS, my initials, DCS at my name, DorothyClaySims.com, DorothyClaySims.com. And
That's
I'm
super
glad
easy.
to share anything I've got because that's actually my goal.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. It's just a fascinating topic, and you've had, a fascinating and wonderful career. And thank you for being out there, fighting the good fight for anybody who needs help with this. Thank you.
Sure, glad to do it.
If you'd like to appear on Courtside Convo, send us an email or visit us at legalgraphicworks.com. Look for new episodes every Thursday on the Legal Graphic Works YouTube channel, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a show. Thanks for watching.